are seen to be interconnected, reflecting the integral links between different dimensions of human development. The SDGs are built around 17 goals with 169 targets, which can be summarized as follows: ending poverty in all of its forms everywhere, ending hunger, achieving gender equality, ensuring healthy lives and promoting the well-being for all at all ages, ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. The SDGs argue strongly for a partnership-based approach to development, as well as a practical and pragmatic agenda to improve life in a sustainable way for this and for future generations. The goals are based on defined guidelines and targets for all countries to adopt in the context of their own priorities and environmental changes at the world at large. Officially, the SDGs are designed to tackle the root causes of poverty, to deliver increased basic needs, especially for the poorest, tackle inequality, and to do this in the context of protecting the planet and making current and future development sustainable. On the 1st of January 2016, the 17 SDGs of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development came into force. They represent the most ambitious and significant agenda agreed internationally in the issues for the period to 2030. The new goals call for action for all countries, poor, rich, middle income, while not legally binding, except for governments to take ownership of them and establish national frameworks for their achievement. The goals are centered around 5 P's. 1. People. 2. Planet. 3. Prosperity. 3. Peace. And the last one is partnership. Well, just in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all 17 goals. I'm sure that they are all well known to us. But I want to bring all the goals in the context of migration. How is migration captured in these 17 goals that we're talking about? In goals 4, slide 13 please. Goals 4, 5, 8, 10, 16, and 17. Those are the goals that have relation with migration: quality education, gender equality, decent work and economic growth, reduced inequalities, peace, justice, and building strong institutions, partnership for the goals. Those are the goals that have a link with migration. However, goal 10.7, I think, directly mentions Goal 10.7 of the agenda directly talks about migration. It says to facilitate safe, orderly, and regular migration, and its scope is defined in the Annex 2 of the New York Declaration. It is intended to address all aspects of international migration, including the humanitarian, developmental, human rights-related, and other aspects, make an important contribution to global governance and enhance coordination in international migration, present a framework for comprehensive international cooperation on migration and mobility, set out a range of actionable commitments, means of implementation, and framework for follow-up and review among member states regarding international migration in all its dimensions. I would like to quote the IOM Director General that says that the Global Compact comes at an important moment. It contains within it the promise of an evidence-based, less politically charged discourse on migration, a plan for developing more comprehensive policies to improving the lives of migrants and the communities in which they live, possibility to reduce dangerous, chaotic, and irregular migration flows. Okay, I don't have all the time, but I would like to end my presentation with the video because I think that's going to give us a good overview of what IOM is. Okay, it seems technology is not on our side today. Okay, how do we end this one? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ada Moloko. And we now have um, two discussants in person of Professor Laide Gbadamosi and Professor Kola Olusanya. Please, 5 minutes, and I will harass you once it's 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
I will seek the protection of Professor Abinam if you have to harass me. Thank you, Ada Moluku, for that insightful and impactful discourse on migration. When you hear frightening news of President Trump sending threats to deport undocumented and illegal migrants from Mexico, from El Salvador, from Guatemala, and other parts of the world. When you hear that Mediterranean Sea people crossing the Mediterranean Sea from Libya to Italy and Spain, and that 70 million people have been displaced by war, disasters, and violence, then you will agree with me that migration is a front burner issue. Having said that, I will discuss this paper in 3 segments. First, a quick review of what Ada has just told us about IOM as a migration agency, how they manage migration, a review of SDGs, the Global Compact for Migration, and what IOM is doing in terms of programming and SDGs. I do not subscribe to the fact that migration is entirely bad after all. I don't subscribe to that school of thought. And by way of refreshing your memory, the topic before us is migration, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how they impact on SDGs. To me, migrants are not totally useless people. When they migrate from the host countries, they bring in economic growth. From the stipend they earn, they pay taxes. That helps you to grow your economy. You take benefits of their skills. Some of them are highly skilled, doctors, lawyers, architects, and so on and so forth. And they bring in cultural diversity. And again, when they return, they bring in money. In Edo State, for instance, usually in the last quarter of the years, you see a lot of foreign currency coming into the society. However, the ugly side of migration has to do with security concerns. If you do not encourage migrants to live productive lives, they become miscreants, they become shenanigans, they become nuisances to your economy, and they heighten security, they endanger the security of lives and property. You use them to do dirty jobs, very dangerous jobs that your indigenes cannot think of doing. And you render them highly susceptible to racism and xenophobia. Having said that, I will now quickly discuss the centrality of SDGs and migration. You will also agree with me that migration is a key driver of SDGs. For instance, goal number 3, because these migrants are homeless, they are undocumented, they float around in the society, that renders them vulnerable to health risks. So if you don't accord them access to health, they may end up becoming vectors of tuberculosis, Ebola, and HIV. Then goal number 4 is education. They also have right to education, so that there is need to provide them with educational opportunities. Goal number 5 on gender equality. Migrants are vulnerable to human trafficking and gender-based violence. And SDG goal number 5 exists to protect them from these vices of violence. Decent work. That's goal number 8. It's a misnomer to classify them as useless and valueless. I'll give you an example. If you want very good people involved in tiling, plastering houses, you bring in people, all these Togolese, and from the Republic of Benin. They are very good. So the best you can do is to get the best out of them. Then on goal number 11, we are talking about sustainable societies. It is not ideal to underestimate migrants, that they don't have any importance to do in your city life. You must include them in your urban development planning, otherwise they become problems to the society. And in goal number 13, talking about climate change. Migrants are worse affected by climate-related disasters. So it is important that you accord them the necessary protection. And if you want peaceful societies, like you have in goal number 18, you have to engage them to live very productive lives. You give your citizens social security allowances. If you cannot accord them the same privilege, it is important you find work for them. Because as the saying goes, devil finds workshop in idle hands. Last but not the least, on goal number 17, you are talking about partnership. The world has now become a global village. So we need each other for survival. These migrants that you engage as cleaners, as gardeners, which you and your indigenous cannot do, you have to create an environment for them. Because God did not create anybody as useless. So it is important that you engage them, you empower them, and you see them as stakeholders and development actors, so that they can contribute to the development of SDGs. It is also important that you accord them all the rights that all human beings, including them, are entitled to. And last but not the least, you cannot be talking about building a safer and inclusive, a better and a prepared society if you neglect the roles of migrants. If you feel that migrants do not have any role to play in SDGs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Please be reminded, sir, that I didn't stop you. I found that you are the chairman when I will be the discussant. I didn't stop you, Professor Olusonya.
Let me first commend either May Fernandez through Adamo for a well-presented and well-written paper. I think the issue of migration is dependent on the angle from which you view it. As Africans and people of the global south, I think it would be criminal for us to conclude that migration has been beneficial to the global south or to Africa or to Nigeria. It depends on the name we also call it. The first huge set of migration happened between 1400 to 1900. They call it slave trade. 12 million Africans were forcibly moved to Europe and Americas. It's migration. They've turned to become permanent personalities, wonderful citizens in those domains. And we still have some Africans also in India, and they are still in the back room of the most despicable rural part of India. They are yet to be acculturated. Though they speak the language, but the India community has refused them. So they are Africans. They are also people from the 14 to 1900 period. Now, my argument has been, whenever it is most preferable for the West coins a language for us, and we key into the language at every point in time. And by the time they've done that, because we are not the ones setting the template, and also the fact that we're looking towards them for grants and to also advance their studies, we go ahead, we continue without, at most times, taking cognizance of the problems on the African continent or the global south. What am I trying to say? Migration is so good, I would say, I concur, to the beneficial or the destination countries. And the destination countries in this regard are not in the global south. They are mostly in the global north, Europe and North America. And if that is the case, then you begin to question the definition or even the concept of sustainable development when you view it vis-a-vis global north and south. And what am I trying to say here? It is okay for the global north to develop at the detriment of the global south. That is what it means. We attract your best, we take your best from you, and then you can be in the lodges, we'll give you grants and aids continuously. Let me quote one Canadian Deputy Prime Minister, far back 2003, during the Liberal Party Leadership Convention. And a question was posed to him: how are you going to deal with immigrants who are professionally trained from abroad? And he said, we don't care about these professionally trained people from abroad. We only care about the children they're going to produce in Canada. And that is it. Whether you're an engineer or not, we got unskilled job for you to make you to fit in. And when you fit in, we take care of your kids. They become the kind of doctors and engineers we want. And that set the debate for that period in the dimension and the direction of what migration is. It's good sustainable development is trying to bridge a gap. But I'm going to address this way. Is sustainable development actually aim at reducing inequality? How equal is the global north and south in terms of opportunities? Quality of education. The best of Africa or the best of Nigeria has been taken out. Currently today, more than 50%, 50,000 doctors trained by the government of this country are far in Europe and America. This is a detriment to Africa. Our UCH, that used to be number 2 in the Commonwealth, is not even ranked at all presently. Our peace, justice. Peace is relative. Justice is a big issue, and it is generational. We've had discussion about the Congo. Like the VC said, if Congo's issue is resolved, Africa's issue will be resolved. Assumably, as one conflict is ending in Africa, another conflict is rising up, because the global north doesn't want that. Reason: Japan has reduced procreation. Most Western Europe and Americans, indigenous whites, are no more giving birth at the rate we're producing. So which means for the continent to keep sustaining, we need more people from the global south, preferably Africa, because we give more child. Now, no to poverty is a good idea. But how do you end the poverty in the countries of origin? When the best of Africa has been taken off, GDP will be reduced. Well, let me say good news. Liberia's GDP is about, I think, 29%, which is the highest, fueled by remittances. Now, World Bank is looking at Africa from the age of remittances from those people. That is not the best way to look at us. That is almost saying, okay, we take your best from you, now you get some $100, $200, and then you are developing. We're not developing. Sustainable development, we see it as a socio-economic, political, and also socio-cultural. I'm more concerned about the economic part. In the late 80s, IMF, without testing this policy, structural adjustment policy, said we will take all African countries, go try this. At the end of it, a decade and a half afterward, IMF have to apologize to African countries and even global South countries. And that was the period that many African professionals, including professors, left the shores of this country. The
Thank you,
greatest loser is Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, in the next few minutes we have to be out of here. I wanted to take questions before, but let me apologize that I won't be able to take questions again. Because the video on IOM that was supposed to play is ready now. Am I right? Looks as if we still have challenges. So let me take two questions. One from this side, one from this side. Okay. I have to be partial here. So I'll take a lady here and I'll take KBC. Just two questions. So please. Thank you. And now KBC.
Yes. Good morning. Good morning. I didn't want to wait until the next session for issue of migration. Because, Prof, even Yorubas were natural migrants.
Honor.
We fought among ourselves for 100 years.
And that this is not even
And
what
there's no community in Yoruba land that is monolithic.
yes.
There's no community in Yoruba land. You have migrants in Ibadan. You have migrants in Okelawan. And the Okelawan people.
Let's try.
Some people came from Orire to locate their roots. Only last week. That's who we are. And I think we should know that once you cannot get anything done anymore,
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Uh, so please, that's the video. I just want to make 3 sentences and then call on Ms. Adamoku. Yeah. So for our response, in the next couple of minutes, we should be here out of air. My conclusion is, where do we move on migration as per GASD? The first issue that I think we need to talk about is about internal migration. We have a lot of people that have migrated in this country, and we have internal migrants. For example, in Yoruba land now, there's a brewing controversy about Fulani settlers. And I know many communities already have, in my area we call them Ga, I don't know what they call them in any other place. Those are migrants for over 100 years now. So what do we do with them? Do we chase them away the way some people are saying, or we have policies for them? I think that's one area that GASD can contribute. The second issue that I think GASD can also contribute has to do with internal migration. Africa is the only continent in the world where you require more visas to enter another African country. For other regions of the world, once you belong to that region, you hardly require visa. But as in Nigeria, you require visa for virtually every other country that is not in West Africa. So this is an issue for us as researchers. The third issue that I want to raise, and I'm throwing this directly at the distinguished senator, can we have a migration policy in this country? The truth and the fact is that people will want to migrate to Europe and developed countries. And many of them are doing that at the detriment of their health and their family. Can we have a policy that will encourage our young people to move out, to move to Canada, to move somewhere else, and then bring the remittances back home? If we don't do that, they will go anyway. And yesterday, Professor Yerima was talking about Vladimir quotation to say that what happens is that people bring their dead back home. Can we have a policy that says if you don't live here, you can bring your dead body here? Ms. Moloku.
Okay, quickly, I just wanted to respond to the question. I hope the video has, given an overview of what we do worldwide. But in Nigeria, we have lots of projects. One thing we do is that we facilitate migration. So we're not against migration. IOM is not against migration. That's our baby. Our baby is to facilitate migration, making migration beneficial to everyone. So anything we can do to make migration beneficial to the person traveling, because most of the time you decide to travel to better your life first. And then you better the life of your family, then you better the life of your country. As much as possible, we want to make that migration experience beneficial to you. In case in the journey you encounter problems, IOM is also there for you. So we do a lot of returns. So I don't know how many chartered planes that we have brought back since 2016 from Libya. We bring back lots of Nigerians who you read in the news are in very severe, desperate conditions. We help to bring them back because they cannot help themselves. They cannot continue on the journey. They don't have the means to come back. We help to bring them back. And when we bring them back, we help them to reintegrate. So a part of the work we do is called assisted voluntary returns and reintegration. We help them to find a business. We give them a grant to enable them to establish businesses here. Again, another work we do is heavy on humanitarian. So in the Northeast, we read about people who are displaced, Boko Haram, all that, and such problems. We help to cater for their livelihood needs. We give them non-food items. We try to alleviate, because they are in situations that they didn't ask for. They are people in need. So we help to give them assistance as much as possible. So I hope that's a little overview. I can't go into all the details, but that's all we do. But I want you to know that IOM is not against migration. KBS, we always know that migration has been man's historical way of adapting. From the time of Adam and Eve, man has been moving, and we facilitate it. We help the countries they are living from. We help the countries they are moving to. We help the migrants themselves, and that's what IOM stands for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And on that note, I declare this session closed.
Video has been coming.
I'm back to my role.
Okay, everyone here another audio.
The third paper for the day is entitled Building Climate Resilient Development Agenda, Issues and Context. The chairperson for this session is Professor Patience Akinwusi. Please come over, ma'am. The discussants are Professor Adetunji Kainde. Please come over. The next Logun Orisha. And the presenter of the paper is Professor Francis Adeshina. Remembered, for presenters, maximum 15 minutes, no extra. Each discussant, 5 minutes, no extra. And then 2-3 minutes to wrap up. That 2-3 minutes include opening by the chair and the closing by the chair. Also questions or comments. Thank you.
To everybody that is seated here this morning. We are not going to waste time during this session. I will like to call Professor Francis Adeshina to come on board right away. Thank you.
I would like to stand on the existing protocol, but it's really difficult for me not to say one or two words to the Vice Chancellor and the Director of this institute to congratulate you for this massive impact. When I entered the campus, I saw all of the Sustainable Development Goals boldly displayed. And I said a lot of thoughts had gone into constituting this conference. So congratulations to you, sir, and congratulations to Osun State University. I'm to speak on climate resilient development. And I want to remark that that concept has become necessary because of the fact that climate is changing. Of course, many people don't believe that there's anything like that. For many centuries, climate had been fairly stable. And so in history, you will find that nobody believed that we could enter into any different climatic regime like we have today. So in the next few minutes, I hope that I will do a presentation on the climate change phenomenon and its Now it is actually called extreme weather, because with extreme weather, you can't miss it. That is misinformation. Everything he said was wrong. You can't talk about clean climate. There's nothing like clean climate. Is the average condition of weather over a long period. So he got it wrong, and he was also, equating global warming as an alternative to climate. There's no time to talk about them, but just to make the point that somebody of his stature should have clarified the terms very well. And one is not surprised that he reversed some of the good things that his predecessors did in office. If you are following the politics in America, he withdrew from the Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement was signed in 2015, and the idea was that every country was going to take responsibility of actions that will help to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that are released and thereby control climate change. But we know Trump is not doing that, and is having a lot of impact on the international response to climate change. Now, coming to Nigeria, you know all the story about Nigeria, our rising population, which people think is strength, but which I want to remind us that it's a problem. Because of sustainability, we need to continue to ask ourselves, are we growing at a rate that is sustainable? And I would like to say no. In 2004, there's a document on 2004 on the policy, a policy document on population. Particularly in sectors like agriculture, because we run rain-fed agriculture, and also because many people are engaged in agriculture. So we are going to feel the impact of climate change a lot more than we are feeling it now. So it's just wise for us to take appropriate action that can help us to adapt as the UNFCCC has conferred over the years, and at the same time mitigate the climate change. We spoke about, in that paper, about the intervention of WMO. It was the WMO, that's World Meteorological Organization, in 1976 that first raised the signal that we are entering into some new realm of climate because of the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And their estimate is that up to 2012, we've had about 0.85 degrees centigrade increase in temperature. That's less than 1 degree centigrade, increase in temperature. But that's a significant figure, because you can have all of the high temperatures within a few months. And so it can feel like 5 to 10 degrees increase in temperature. So it's so very, very significant. And those of us who are following the negotiations going on in the world, moving a little bit faster than the way the thing is projected. We're following the negotiation in the world. What the world is talking about is bringing down the temperature to less than 2 degrees, and if possible, to 1.5 degrees. That is the kind of target that the whole world is looking at, but nobody is really moving in any direction close to getting to that in 2030. Now, what are the impacts of climate change? There are economic, there are social, and physical impacts of climate change. Physical impacts, very familiar with it. We have floods. That's very easy for us to understand. Flood is not a new thing, but the frequencies have increased in the last couple of years. And we are so sure that by the time we hit July, we may be in another realm of floods because the soil is already moist now. So if you have additional rain, it will flow on the surface, and with all the misuse of the environment around us, we are going to have a lot of impacts, even this year. So when we are talking about impacts, we are looking at things like floods, like droughts, and other extreme climatic events. And also we'll talk about the climate trend, particularly the rising temperature. Those are the physical impacts. Then we have social impacts of climate change. We'll just talk about migration. People migrate because of climate change. Of course, some people believe that Lake Chad is drying because of climate change, and that just forced so many people to move away from that belt of West Africa. Well, I do not believe that climate change is wholly responsible for what is happening in climate in Lake Chad. And I want to signpost that to underscore the fact that we are mismanaging the environment. Part of the reasons why climate change is so severe is the fact that we are not managing our environment very well. If you go to that map, you just scroll down, there's a map, just scroll down, you will see a map that shows the Komodo-Yobe Basin. After that one, okay, so that map shows the drainage basin that the rivers that drain into Lake Chad from the Nigerian side. Now the next, okay, the next diagram. Okay, the next map. So from that side, we have Tiga Dam and Chalawa Dam. The two dams are in Kano State. They're taking a lot of water from the rivers that are supposed to be draining into Lake Chad. So Lake Chad is not drying primarily because of climate change, but because we are not doing well in terms of management. So we need to build resilience in our socioeconomic system in order to be able to cope with the impact of climate. The theory is that the stronger your economy, the more able you are to cope with the stress of climate change. Some of us will remember what happened in the southern part of the US a couple of years ago, and even last year. Massive destruction. But the US was able to come back because of the resilience, because of the economy of that country. So we need to strengthen our economy, we need to strengthen our social structure if we are going to do that. And what are we going to do? We need policies. Fortunately, we have started very well. Some of us who are familiar with policies in agriculture, you can go down. There were some policy documents that Dr. Adeshina developed as a Minister of Agriculture in those days, and they are so very useful, very pertinent to Nigeria's response to climate change. And of course, Nigeria has a national policy on climate change, which states very clearly what we should be doing if we are going to deal with, to be climate resilient economy. And I want to close with two remarks on this resilience. 2009 in Copenhagen, the whole world agreed that the developed world will move $100 billion to the south. That money is still there. And I want the Institute to take note of this. There's still a lot of money outside there for climate. But they are not free money. They are private sector money, which means that if you get the money, you must be able to turn it around and make money. So if you don't have bankable, as it is called, bankable projects, you will not be able to attract those funds. So we must have to develop our capacity to access the kind of funds that will help us develop our economy in such a way that we will become resilient. I want to point out that in the effort to be resilient, we've moved a lot. We've done a lot in terms of renewable energy, because renewable energy can generate the money and bring the profit back. But we have not been able to do the same in agriculture. If you put money in agriculture, it disappears. I'm sure those of us in agriculture will know that most of the intervention projects have come, and once the donors withdraw, the projects die because we've not been able to articulate a means of sustainably running our agriculture. So in building climate change resilient economy, we need to mobilize funds, and we need to develop capacity to access funds, particularly from the private sector. And the last point that I'm going to end with is the need also to continue to develop practical policies that we can implement, not policies that we withdraw and put under the table. As at the moment, there's a lot of interest in the use of natural gas. The penetration is actually going really, really deep. But in spite of what government has done, the market for firewood is still big. Those who are dealing with charcoal are still having the field day, which means we have a lot more to do if we are going to cut back on the use of fire, which is critical for us in order to keep carbon and in order to also to reduce emission of greenhouse gas. I hope that I'll be able to talk again when I come back. Thank you, sir.
So after having listened to that lecture by our Professor Francis Adeshina, we go into a session of discussion. So I will like to call on Professor Kehinde to come and discuss the topic. You have 5 minutes.
Let me stand on the existing protocol. I must commend Professor Francis Adeshina for a well-prepared paper. Probably time didn't allow him to say a lot of other interesting things in that presentation. The title, Climate Resilient Development Agenda, Issues and Context. Principally, I think what the paper is addressing is about using the climate lens to view sustainable development. And if you are going to do that, I think the first issue that was thrown up in the paper is that of perception on climate change. And I think there are still mixed messages concerning that. I wouldn't know whether in this audience there are still scientists or some people that don't believe in the reality of climate change. Perhaps there might still be. If from his presentation, notable political figures globally, the Trump is still ignorant about what climate change addresses. I think there is a problem. So what we have in summary when it comes to the perception in terms of the political class, we have a spectrum of between the truth to denial and indifference. So these messages are mixed. So if we now stand on the ground that climate change, the climate change is real, then we begin to see from the stand of scientific community, from the work of the World Meteorological Organization in 1976, which actually confirmed the reality of climate change, and even some other works which was stated in that paper showed that within the pre-industrial period of 1850s, there was one episode of high summer temperature in the northern hemisphere. And after the pre-industrial period, in a period of 200 years, we had 3 episodes of high summer temperature in the northern hemisphere. And what that tells us is that human activity post during the industrial era is a significant factor that added to, that increased the temperature of the atmosphere. The paper also told us about the different impacts of climate change. A lot of this we can see, a lot we can feel. The social impacts, we've seen abandonment of farms due to crop failures. We've seen forced migration, damages to residential apartment by windstorm. On the economic side, we've seen total crop failure. We've seen flood. The paper mentioned copiously cases of flood in different parts of the country, and increase in cost of construction through investment in more cooling system. That is another angle to the economic impact or cost of climate change. If we now go zero in on the Nigerian situation, half of the land mass is agricultural land, which suggests that agricultural activity, which is a climate-sensitive sector or activity, cause for concern. And if we look at other sectors, we see that even the oil, which is the highest foreign exchange earner, also is climate sensitive. If we look in this direction, it's food for thought for us that concerted efforts must come up on climate adaptation and mitigation. If we are talking about, in the case of agriculture, the estimation is that about 60% of the world population, that 60%, food production must increase by 60% as the world approaches a population of 9 billion by 2050. So the paper goes on to tell us about the possible cost of climate adaptation. Let me zero in on what was presented for agriculture, that by 2020, agriculture will require 3.06 billion US dollars per year by year 2020. And what is amazing is that, that is about 1.1 trillion. And the amazing thing about that is that even presently, the budget of agriculture is about 118 billion, which shows that we are not prepared to address the negative consequences of climate change. And again, the policy intervention, he mentioned how we have been passive towards, by either ignoring or by our inaction. To conclude, the paper gave an impression that there must be a coordinated approach to address climate change by establishing a commission or agency that would address that issue. Because presently, the only institution that is directly charged with addressing climate change is the Department of Climate Change in the Federal Ministry of Environment. And I think that is a far cry if we really need to do business with addressing climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kende. I'd like to call on Professor Ologun Orisha for his own contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I need to make some few clarifications. Climate change is not new. We had climate change in the past. If you are a student of Bible, even Quran, we had a king. He had a dream. He saw 7 fat cows consumed by 7 thin cows. That was a puzzle. He got an interpreter, and they told him that was 7 years of abundance, rainfall, plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. There are several documentary evidences to prove that climate change is not new. But what is new in climate change has been concluded by the IPCC report. What is new? What is new is that the present climate change has anthropogenic interference. Climate change in the past, they say it was due to natural forces. But now, IPCC concluded in 1988 that it has anthropogenic interference. What is anthropogenic? It means mass interference. That the present climate change is caused by so much pollution caused by the Western world, the industrialized world of this country, of the world. They polluted. The developing country, they have little or no contribution because they are not industrialized. But the truth is that if you must develop, you must pollute. Now we have gotten to this point. Several policies, protocol at the international arena have been brought forward. One of them is the Montreal Protocol. It was very successful because it bans the production, the consumptions of fluorochlorocarbon, because the developing world knew that it will affect them, because it destroys ozones and it will allow ultraviolet radiation to come in, causes cancer. Everybody, they compel countries of the world to get it signed. That is why now there's no chlorofluorocarbon. You have new fridges, not old fridges, and it has been subsidized by the international community. But look at Kyoto Protocol. Kyoto Protocol failed because America produces almost 40% or more of the pollution in the world, and it did not give back into Kyoto Protocol. And because of that, most countries of the world, they never bought into the principles of Kyoto Protocol. Most of the meetings about climate change preventions and whatever is just a talk show, because international law, international conventions are not legally binding. They are soft law, like Fagbones said yesterday. That's a major lacuna. But for us in developing country, I think we should follow the BRICS. Brazil, India, Russia, South Africa, and China. They don't care about the talk. They keep permitting and developing. That's the truth. Not telling us to limit how much pollutants we produce. America is the greatest polluter in the world. They use BB cars. They don't care. That's why, look at Donald Trump. Anything that will affect U.S. economy, they don't compromise. So I think for a developing country like ours, where we don't have the capital, we don't have the wherewithal, the infrastructure, we should concentrate on development agenda. What are the consequences of climate change? Like he said, in 2012, out of 36 states in Nigeria, 25 were completely submerged due to flooding. In the northern part, 2/3, they suffer from drought and desertification. What are we doing about that? In developed world, if you go to the US, they have problem with hurricane. They have hurricane research center. They monitor, they predict. Do we have flood research center in Nigeria? There's none. We have over 147 universities. There is no flood research center in Nigeria. There is no drought research center in Nigeria. In the US, they have flood research center based in the University of Nebraska and several pockets, and they pump a lot of money in predicting, in monitoring. But here, what do? In 2012, they set up Dangote Foundation to raise money. I was expecting some chunk of money to be devoted for research. When is the 2012 flood going to come back again? We don't know. And it's still coming back again. So these are the serious challenges. And for countries in developing world, what they are now talking about is climate resilience. What is climate resilience? Climate resilience has to do with, it's a new paradigm that tries to climate-proof our development, to provide defenses so that all our national developmental goals can be achieved. It implies, it goes beyond adaptation. It talks about the impact of climate change, adaptation to climate change, and recovery when there's a disaster. Do we have recovery plan? That's the issue. Nigeria is a country where we only respond to emergency. Ad hoc committees. I'm happy the senator is here. What are we doing with ecological? Most countries of the world now, what they are to come out with what we call climate resilient developmental agenda. And that should be one of the major focus of this center. If Nigeria does not have one, let GASI produce one for Nigeria. Dominican Republic has one. And so many of these small island countries that are highly vulnerable. That is to be the focus, because we don't know where we are going. We don't know what we are doing. And climate change, like I've said, is real. And unfortunately, we don't have the wherewithal, we don't have capital, we don't have infrastructure, we don't even have expertise. We don't even have data to do that. And we don't even have climate monitoring station. We can't even do simulation. Only South Africa can do climate modeling in Africa. So if you look at the picture I've painted, is Nigeria vulnerable or not? I'm asking you. We're in deep crisis. We need to act. Thank you.
We are indeed very grateful to the participants. They have done justice to the topic on climate resilience. The issue here is that our own center that we have just set up needs to act and act promptly. We have taken the bull by the horn in this university, and the impact must be felt in Nigeria. We are talking of industrialized economy and all other things. Do we even have any means of measuring emission from our vehicles that we use? Everybody goes about with rickety cars, pumping out large amount of emission. As you go along the road, our generators, the refuse disposal system that we use, we burn and we release a lot of emission via the burning. There are other means of refuse disposal which we need to tap into. I will suggest that this new center that we are launching today should collaborate with the Department of Community Medicine. There are other methods of refuse disposal that we need to look into to help our local communities so that we can make our own impact right from this center. Then the other issue, Professor Adeshina mentioned a lot of funds lying fallow somewhere, looking for academics to tap into it. So the center should be charged with this responsibility so that they can take up on a very high pedestal, because without money you cannot do so many things. But now that we know that there are available resources to tap into, our center will take due advantage of that. So we like to entertain 2 questions, one from there and one from here. Professor, Dr. Cassie. Is he coming forward or you are giving him the mic to save time?
Thank you so much. Let me start on the existing protocols. I want to appreciate our Vice Chancellor for this initiative. Now, I want to disagree a little with Prof on the issue of Nigeria's population being unsustainable. I think that Nigeria's population remains a strength, and we need to tap into that strength. Nigeria still remains the destination of so much investment that comes south of the Sahara. And it's not because of, it's because of the population. And as a result of that, we need to tap into it in order to make it sustainable. I think our challenges have been that of policy formulation. And even when the policies are formulated, they are not implemented to take care of the growing population. I was very, very excited yesterday with the remark from the minister from Ghana, who was already looking at every village a dam as a center for development that will stimulate development and can be able to harness the resources and then be able to curtail the so-called migration. Because if you look at migration, migration is a very serious issue that is confronting Africa. I call it the journey of no return. Because migration is not new, like the KBOC said. If you look at migration, across the whole of West Africa, the Yorubas are the most mobile and the most resilient. Go to Ghana. If you go to Ghana, you find the Obomosho people. If you go to Cote d'Ivoire, you will see the Ijibo people. Every day, 2 buses leave from Cote d'Ivoire to Ijibo, and from Ijibo back to Cote d'Ivoire. I think that if we can be able to tap into this potential, huge human potential, and if you go to this community, you see how much they have been able to plow back in form of returns to develop their communities. If we tap into it, I think that we can be able to move forward.
Thank you. The Honorable Senator, give the mic to.
The chairman of the session, all protocols observed. Certain challenges have been thrown up in the course of presentation, and if I keep silent, it will be as if I am not part of the deliberation. I quite agree that there cannot be short supply of policies on critical areas. So I would agree that yes, it's possible to have a migration policy. And some other challenges have been raised in terms of having a resilient approach to the issue of climate change. I would rather throw back the challenge to the academics that we should develop workable programs to resolve so many identified problems of our country in such a way that the policymakers, the lawmakers, and the executive will be able to implement them. I've seen that there have been a lacuna in terms of relationship between the town and the down in the country. Most of the propositions that come, they only stop at the level of identification of the problem rather than coming up with workable solutions, taking into cognizance the peculiar challenges that we have. And I've also observed too, and I'm saying this not cascading at academics, at least until January this year, I'm still a member of the faculty of the College of Law of this university. The challenge is how do we come up with workable programs and also the peculiar challenges to be able to address those problems. I quite agree, for instance, in the area of migration. I know some countries in the world, they don't announce it, but they have a way that they deliberately send their citizens to some other country in order to be able to attract remittances. I know, for instance, of Malaysia, the bulk of Malaysian economy is funded by remittances from other places, but they are quite record. There are even deliberate programs to have high-end intellectuals sponsored by the state so that they send them to Ivy Leagues all over the world to be able to do so. So I quite agree we have to also address the issue of climate change in a very resilient manner. The truth is that we must also not just see our population as an asset. Nigeria is a very poor country. If you don't begin to see it that way, we'll continue to make mistakes. The fact that there is oil is not even an added advantage to all. The total earning of Nigeria from oil in a day is just about $200 million. From the projection of population of between 180 and 200 million, that leaves us with about $1 to every Nigerian. What could $1 do to every Nigerian? This country is a poor country until we take the challenge of population, the challenge of development, and the challenge of production. When you look at the population of Nigeria, the land mass that we have, can it actually feed us, taking into cognizance the nature of agricultural practices? This is a challenge. The population, rather, is not yet an asset until it becomes a tool for sustainable productivity. Less than 1/8 of Nigerian population actually engage in productive activity. If we can struggle to get 1/4 of us to engage in productive activity, then we can be able to talk about wealth creation, development, and sustainable development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Senator. I would like to charge you that as you have listened to some of the problems that we have in this nation during the course of this discourse, we would like to charge you with the responsibility of raising some motions on behalf of such things when you are already in the Senate. So we are expecting some motions to be raised by you along such lines so that the community can benefit maximally. Thank you so much. Professor Adeshina, a last note from you, sir.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the questions. I want
The topic before us is sustainable development of Osun State, and it's going to be delivered by no other person than the distinguished senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria representing Osun West, Osun Central. Please send our heartfelt thanks to His Excellency, former visitor, former governor of the state of Osun. We still hold him very dear in our hearts. He's one man I respect for one singular reason. A governor, a visitor for 8 good years, who never for one day interfered with university autonomy. I therefore welcome Honorable Senator to the podium. Thank you, sir.
I start by seeking refuge from Almighty Allah from the Satan, their cause. I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. First and foremost, on behalf of Ogbeni Rauf Adesoji Aregbesola, I apologize for him not being here. He's out of the country, otherwise would have been around. Secondly, his paper, I'm just a mere, what Professor Badamosi will call amino acids. Just read out his paper because he actually took the time to present his paper. I think he sent it across on the 24th. That was on Monday. And Professor Lapo Popola thought that is everybody that does not sleep, sent it around 5:30 a.m. yesterday morning. So I had the privilege to present his paper the way he had done so. Of course, he doesn't like being referred to as former governor of state of Osun. He preferred to call himself Ogbeni Rauf Aregbesola. As far as he's concerned, the mandate of the governor has expired. We have a new leader of our team, Mr. Boyego Etola. So his paper goes thus. Paper presented by Ogbeni Rauf Adesoji Aregbesola at the official launch of Global Affairs and Sustainable Development Institute, GASD of Osun State University, held at the university campus on Wednesday, June 26, 2019. All protocols duly observed. The title of the paper is Sustainable Development in an Emerging State like Osun. He said that he expressed his gratitude to the GASD of the State University for the kind invitation to the official launch, and that the last time he appeared here, he appeared in official capacity as visitor at the convocation ceremony of the university. So he considered it a worthy endeavor that has been called to speak to the topic in the assembly of scholars, administrators, students, and he also further congratulates the center, the institute, and the university for the establishment of this institute. And to him, is a bold and ambitious step which will further entrench the university as a center of excellence. He expressed concern that when it comes to education, funding is usually a challenge, in that to have a world-class institute, you must have adequate funding to be able to put in place excellent infrastructure and attract quality faculty in the relevant fields. So we hope that this has been well thought out. At the end of the day, we shall have the institute of our dream. Having represented Professor Badamosi at the academic program of the university and the procedure taken, I attest on behalf of the university that this has been taken care of. The second is focus, according to him. He said he has seen examples of how institutions derail over time in this kind of endeavor. Many institutes were set up with lofty goals, but along the line, they couldn't get